Hey to all of you in different time zones. We are a lot of people here in this webinar and joining us, and we will talk about the scenarios for the development of MARS, Maritime Autonomous Surface Ships. We find this topic extremely important. We asked a couple of years ago, we asked our council, a small workshop, to define the 10 most important issues for IALA in the future. And number one was digitalization. And number two was MARS, how IALA should react to this development of autonomous ships in the future. And Tom Southall will explain much more in details about the workshop and why and how we did it. But the main outcome of this whole process of defining these scenarios is to identify the further work needed by IALA to prepare for the H2 navigation, which are our main topic, H2 navigation needed in a more digitalized world. And that is, I would say, one of the most common questions from our membership to us in the Secretariat. What will be needed when we talk about H2 navigation, VTS, traditional buoys, electronic buoys, etc., in the future? And we will, of course, try to answer that question and assist our membership. The publication that was developed after the workshop is, of course, freely available on the website, and we have some hard copies here in the Secretariat as well, if somebody wants that. And it was really developed with a broad range of stakeholders from authorities, industry, and other organizations. And I would really here up front like to thank all of the involved participants for the dedication and the interest in this important result. They worked here for almost 2 days and were extremely dedicated and very, very helpful in developing this product. It is really our hope that the findings and the conclusions that we find in the folder can also assist other stakeholders, not only IALA and our membership, but the whole maritime sector. And we also intend to inform the IMO MSC about the findings at the next meeting of this committee. So with these few words, I would ask you to switch off your cameras to save a little bit of bandwidth, and also to mute your microphones, of course. Now I will leave the floor to Tom Southall, who was the secretary, one of the secretaries to the conference, and also the main author of the report that you can find on the website. So Thomas will take you through the preparation and the workshop itself and the important findings. And then after that, we will, of course, open for questions, more debate, because neither me nor Thomas are experts in this, but we'd be extremely interested in your views, and we will, of course, be ready to answer questions about the report itself. So with this, Tom, over to you.
Thank you very much, Francis. And as Francis said, hello to everybody who's joining us online all around the world. It's lovely to see some old faces and plenty of new faces too. So welcome. Now, I don't think Francis, I don't think he gave too much of my secrets away, so that's good. It's all fresh stuff. And what I intend to do is to give you a brief overview of the document that we've and our findings that we've managed to produce. So quite rightly, over the past few years, there's been a lot of buzz and justifiable excitement with lots of mass projects springing up worldwide. But what we found that we lacked in IALA was perhaps a coherent overview of exactly what to expect and what our members would expect to plan for. It's great importance to us, of course, to understand the short and medium term outlook, especially the where, when, and why questions. And I think we've ascertained a good understanding of that. As Francis said, this is the first step. It doesn't necessarily address what we will do next, but I think it's the first time that we can have a clear view of what we think is going on as regards to MASS and the future. Now, MASS has quite a broad definition of from the, I'll just share my presentation. It ranges from enhanced decision support tools all the way to fully autonomous ships, i.e. crewless ships. Surprisingly, one of the things that really hit me in the research of this, I was reading Pilotage magazine, and our friends at BIMCO also reiterated it at the workshop, and that's how long MASS has been discussed in the maritime industry. Do you know when it was first mentioned, Francis?
Yeah.
You know, he knows. 1964. So it's a long time, and clearly there's quite an allure to this question for each generation. So before we proceed on, please brace yourself for lots of generic artist impressions of MASS operations that I've got from Shutterstock as I take you through what we found. So going back to the 72nd session of the IALA Council, we began this discussion around the development of MASS and the increase in focus from our members. And so consequently, that meant that we established what we've called the MASS Task Force here within IALA. And their job was to analyse the possible impact on Marines' aids to navigation and identify the future requirements and what that meant for the committees in terms of work items that they had to address. So in order to help, the Secretariat took it upon themselves to try and engage and get some input into the MASS Task Force work. And we've conducted a comprehensive examination from many sources, much wider than our membership, which included the workshop on MASS, which was held here in lovely Saint-Germain-en-Laye in October 2023. And the result was the document that Francis was just holding up, which you can access online. As I said, the first step, and we hope it will be used by our membership and wider as a key planning tool that will internally initially guide our work and hopefully provide some insights into what is going on with MASS. We have many varied members, and so you have members who need this work because they want to be on the front foot for the future. They want to be continue to be established transportation hubs, but you've also got members who perhaps want a bit more of a balanced approach. So let's have a look at what the future outlook is first. So you can see on this grid, this is the grid that we've used to make sense of our findings. On the left-hand side, you have a short-term outlook. So that's from now up to about 10 years. And on the right side, you can see it goes from 10 years all the way to 20 and beyond. The axis here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that refers to the IMO, what IMO uses the definitions for MASS. It ranges quite widely. 1 and 2 have crewed vessels. with automised functions and remote operations, and 3 and 4 then go into the autonomous functions, either remotely controlled or completely operating on their own. So let's begin on the left-hand side, and that's considering from 5 to 10 years. And we'll begin with many cruise ships with automised functions. I like to think of this area as doing what we do best in the maritime world, continual development of our navigational tools that we use, from the Viking Sunstones, Harrison's chronometer, all the way to modern day unmanned engine rooms. I say this is almost business as usual. We're continually trying to improve how we do things to support the navigator make better decisions. We can see the beginnings of autonomy here, specifically with inshore specialized and perhaps smaller craft, and remotely controlled vessels, which might become, as we go on, a bit of a bridge between vessels with decision support tools, crewed, to autonomous. And we'll examine the business case around that later on. It does mean crew on board and ashore, of course. We have good examples, notably the Yarra Birkeland, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. The Yarra Birkeland, it's been operating in Norwegian waters since April 2022. It's currently, as far as I'm aware, conducting 2 runs a week, and they want to increase that. I think it's got about 3 persons on board, and the crew will slowly reduce until they go fully autonomous. So it's a very exciting project for a short sea route and container vessel. It's got about 100 containers on board. If we move up into the top here, few crewless autonomous vessels, we understand that there will be a limited number of crewless and perhaps remotely controlled vessels operating in the next 5 to 10 years. But again, really focusing on the specialized craft, tugs, small ferries, survey vessels. It does indicate that there's a stronger investment area there. But of course, that's probably going to be limited to participating states who are quite willing to undertake these operations in their waters. As we saw with the Yarra Birkeland, MASS is in development for short sea cargo routes, and especially inland waterways. And we know of projects in Europe, Japan, South Korea, China, and Russia. But there does not seem to be plans for large-scale implementation of crewless MASS in international waters at this moment. If we move over now to the right-hand side of the table, from 10 to 20 years, more crewed ships with automised functions. That continues to be a theme here, of course, and there'll be perhaps an increase in full or partial remote control. And that opens the door to the capability to shift between remote control and onboard control. And perhaps that can be adapted for the different environments that the vessel is working in and conditions that it's working in. If we move up to this area here, some crewless autonomous ships, well, we can see that there is the intent to have more crewless vessels, more autonomous ships, but this will be limited to areas with reliable connectivity. So again, perhaps it lends itself more to inland waterways and inshore areas, and so ferries, special purpose ships, etc. continues to be a thing. And as we mentioned earlier, there doesn't seem to be a huge appetite for international transport, especially around perhaps the high riskier vessels such as passenger ships and tankers for at least the next 25 years. And one of the main reasons why we say this is because of the lifespan and shipbuilders' perspective that we had. We engaged shipbuilders at the workshop and offline also. And as many of us know here, the lifespan of a vessel can be somewhere, generally it's accepted, between 20 to 25 years. Shipbuilders like Hyundai have expressed that they're not currently looking to build large crewless ships at this time, hence why we're not imagining these larger vessels to be a common sight in our waters for the next for the foreseeable future. So now we've examined what we might expect and where and what, if you like. Now we can examine what we found to be the drivers behind MASS, which was quite an interesting study, because there's been a lot of discussion around what's really driving this, and perhaps it will open some people's eyes as to what the reality of our findings were. So, of course, the business case is central. There is a shortage of seafarers currently, and the human error element always gets considered when talking about MASS and the safety considerations, enhanced navigational safety. But let's start with the business case. So it's crucial to understand the shipping industry. Shippers are not charities. Of course, they want a favourable business case, and they don't tend to be trailblazers looking to be first adopters, notwithstanding vessels like the Eire Berkland. But I'd suggest that that's an exception rather than a rule. Therefore, the levers of change tend to be economic gain, a huge increase in safety, or if the industry is compelled by regulation. Now, there is the chance with people taken out of vessels for space for cargo to be increased. You don't need accommodation, and you don't need space dedicated for navigation. It's often talked about that there will be the cost savings that come hand in hand with that, with a reduction in crew. But we found, and as has been discussed in lots of different forums, that the crew costs are a small fraction of the total operational costs. And of course, there might be an increase in cost for infrastructure ashore for monitoring these vessels. In the case of remotely operated vessels, crew costs don't necessarily go away, and they could actually be elevated, relocated ashore. And if you've got crew on board and ashore, you don't yield that space for cargo either. And finally, maintenance. Ships need maintaining, and this is traditionally done, as I know to my cost, with all my days chipping and painting, that it's done when you're at sea. And there's a question mark as to whether a shipping company would want to incur additional costs whilst that maintenance is done whilst alongside. So there's costs and time lost. Something very interesting was the lack of seafarers, and we see this as quite a compelling driver for MASS. Our friends at BIMCO and ICS released a very interesting report, I recommend it highly, called the Seafarer Workforce Report in July 2021. And according to that report, we will require around 89,000 officers by 2026. And if just to put that into context, it's reported that there's already a deficit of 26,000 STCW certified officers at this time, or in 2021. So that really gives you an idea of the scale of the problem that's facing us. So shippers will look for alternative solutions, and we receive feedback from our partners that this is a real driver to look at MASS in more detail. It can make a maritime career more attractive. There'll be different skills that are used ashore, and of course the prospect of a better family life is rather compelling. So the reduction in reliance on human crew members is definitely quite a solid driver. Then we come to the safety of navigation element. That's always mentioned as well. Enhanced navigation tools that are used could lead to predictive analytics, prevention of accidents with improved traffic management, and enhanced coordination and optimization of maritime traffic in congested waters, for instance. So again, quite compelling. There is the potential to minimize human failures. Machines don't get tired and don't forget, like we all do. But this isn't necessarily a clear-cut question, because humans are certainly better at times at handling uncertainty by applying their knowledge and experience to execute their judgment and come up with perhaps creative problem-solving solutions. So there's a balance here. We have the potential of an over-reliance on technology that could incur potential system errors, cyber attacks, malfunctions, software bugs, communications failures. As we said, it got to be in areas where there's good communication infrastructure, and that could also lead to accidents as well due to the absence of human crew. So perhaps what we're hearing here is more of a mix with the human and the technology interacting. Move on now into a couple of other drivers: efficiency gains and what we've termed here as pioneering spirit. Sounds very grand. Efficiency, the goal not being crewless vessels, but rather ships operating much more efficiently and safely. With better decision support tools, better equipment, perhaps there'll be a higher degree of precision afforded to us when we're at sea. There's the potential for optimized routes and adapting to changing conditions, which could lead to efficient transit times and, as is extremely important in this day and age, better resource utilisation. A reduction in congestion in our busy waterways as well is also a benefit. Boost to profile, so the pioneering spirit. There is an allure for some shippers to be a first mover, and there's a significant boost to a company's profile. We've been discussing the Arrow Birkeland here, and that's clearly enhanced their standing, which is definitely something that some businesses will want to consider. And finally, the regulatory challenges and cooperation. We're really hearing and seeing in lots of different fora that there is an appetite from regulators to start removing any barriers that may exist to this technology. So there is definitely an increase in willingness to address the regulatory challenges that exist. We know of multilateral agreements such as the MOU between Denmark and Belgium, the Netherlands and the United Kingdom in the North Sea that are looking how they can make MASS operations much easier. And of course at IMO you have the non-mandatory gold-based MASS code completion, which will take in effect in 2025, and the mandatory code is looking to come into force in 2028. Notwithstanding IHO's S100 ECDIS mandatory compliance envisaged to be 2029. And of course, we have our own internal challenges here at IALA to make sure we're aiding our members to move forward as well. So with that, for the foreseeable future, we envisage certainly a mixed fleet of conventional ships with different degrees of automation, enhanced decision tools, support tools, and an increase in crewless mass vessels. It's a complex, but I have to say, a very exciting journey ahead, and we're very optimistic. But what we see in the longer term is perhaps not these international voyages for larger vessels for perhaps 20 to 25 years plus, but nonetheless a very exciting time. So all that's left is to thank you all very much for listening. And I have two young boys myself, Harry and Freddie, and in 20 to 25 years' time, I really hope that they're fully autonomous by then as well. So with that, I hand back now to Francis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, for this excellent presentation on the findings of this important workshop. And I can really see that this is a topic that interests people, because we are almost 180 people at this webinar. I think it's one of our records.
Oh my God.
So thank you very much for joining us. And as you heard from the excellent presentation from Tom, we concentrated on three main topics. This: why would ship owners invest, which is the basis of having some ships, is that the ship owners would like to invest in this sometimes very expensive ships. So why would they invest? And that's basically the business case. But the business case can be much more than money.
Absolutely.
It could be renommé, first mover, but definitely also safety,
yeah,
and efficiency. So the business case is not always only money, could be many other things. And then we looked at what kind of ships will we see. And as Tom mentioned, the main conclusion was that we already have completely autonomous ships, but they are relatively small, short sea shipping, close to the shore or even in harbors, and specialized ships. We will slowly see larger ships coming in with no crew and automized, especially small ferries, etc. Cooperation between neighboring countries, like we have examples from Scandinavia. And then we will see within the next 10 to 25 years more ships with crew, but more and more automized systems that could really help safety and also could help reduce the crew. So less cost again for the ship owner. And in the future, but not in the very near future, we are here looking at up to 25 years. So actually, most of the rest of your work period, Tom,
well, yeah,
the rest of your work period, and
my retirement already.
Even our very young colleagues will not have 25 years left to work. We will see larger ships slowly coming in, and at the end of this period, we might see big container ships, etc., on international voyages. So the main conclusion for us here in IALA will be that for the foreseeable future, long-term future, we will have this mixed fleet of completely traditional ships, like we see them today, because they will still be here 25 years from now. And this mixed fleet of these traditional ships, and slowly more and more automized, or even autonomous ships coming in. So that is what we plan for in the future. So now I think we will open up the floor for questions, and you can either use the chat and write your question, or you could raise your hand and you can take the floor. We have a chat here. What becomes of the VTS centers and traditional pilotage service in ports and at the Mars area? Well, You are VTS expert, Tom, but
Allegedly, apparently.
but we can say that in Ayala, we are one of the most important international organizations for VTS now. I think we have our VTS committee, and in Ayala we like to look at the VTS system as the front office of e-navigation, because we see these extremely well-educated people in this very advanced control room. So I'm sure that the VTS will develop a lot in the future. It will be much more digitalized, machine to machine ready, and optimized, and much more efficient than it is today. Not that it's not efficient today, it's perfect, but it will, of course, will have to work much closer with these machine to machine. I mean, much more optimized systems.
Yeah, I think that's right. I haven't got too much to build on that, but clearly it's all about data, real-time data, and it will lead to better planning, so that perhaps the waterways that we have are less congested, and so perhaps there'll be a bit more engagement with the vessels from the port side, and the vessels and the companies, to enable better use of our waterways and better ways, better use of resources. Of course, there's the climate change agenda, and so if a vessel can have a better optimized speed, then it will use less fuel. And perhaps there's an engagement there for the VTS committee to consider.
What do we have here? My question is, how can the maritime industry prepare for emergency? A little bit of emergency response situation involving autonomous vessels, including search and rescue operation. Well, it's not really our responsibility, or we don't have a view on search and rescue operations, but I guess it will not change so much in the future.
It's certainly it's brilliant to see all your questions coming in, because this is what the maritime industry will have to consider. But no, perhaps the response here, that's not really for us to discuss here at Ayala.
Many things will be the same.
Yeah.
It's an autonomous or another. But we have an interesting question here from Anne from Nautical Institute. You were part of the process, and you ask, does Ayala see Aton interacting with this tech development on board Mars ships? And that is, of course, the key question that we will look into now in Ayala. But up front, we can say, yes, of course. Yeah, of course it will. And we are already, we have a working group looking at smart buoys. So the development has already started. When I was young, a buoy was just some metal floating around on the sea. Now it's connected. It has Wi-Fi often. It can give information about wind and weather and salinity and stuff. And we are even looking at tsunami warning buoys. And so, of course, we will see smart buoys in the future. And that's exactly what the next step will be of our Mars task force, to look into what we can expect of the future.
Yeah. I know projects with some of our members, machine readable Aton already. There's lots of anticipation here. And we saw lots of good presentations at the Ayala conference on just this subject. So people are raring to go to see how our Aton will interact with the next generation.
What is it from Simon? Atons will have to develop Center for New Technology to assist automation in the same way they have involved to support AIS and remote connectivity. Yes, maybe. Perhaps, maybe. But the technology, we already look at involving technology in the DTEC committee. So participate in our committee work, and you will be part of this development of new technology. But of course, it has to involve
Yeah, especially as we said, mass is such a wide-ranging term. That of course the decision support tools that interact with marine aids to navigation will be integrated into vessels as we go, as Simon said, you know, such as AIS, etc.
Yeah. We have a raised hand there from Steve from Kongsberg. Please, Steve.
Thanks, Francis and Tom. Yeah, I think I'd just like to comment on the point you made earlier about it being critical for the right business case. You know, this is absolutely fundamental, and that will vary accordingly. But one thing I didn't hear mentioned in that is what I would see as probably one of the biggest business drivers here, and that's going to be on the environmental. Let's not forget the Yara Birkeland takes 40,000 truck journeys off the roads every year. And in our experience, it's going to be they're the areas in that short sea shipping routes that will potentially be the first business drivers rather than return on investment, etc. I think they are. There, I agree with the timeframes you've been discussing, but I think in that between now and 5-10 year period, I think the environmental business case, that's probably the area. Thank you very much.
I think, Steve, that's an excellent input, and for sure this environmental driver is extremely strong at the moment, and that will be part of the business case for sure. The reason why we did not emphasize this was it was a little bit difficult for us to argue that it's the unmanned or autonomous part that makes the business case, because Yara Birkeland could also be a conventional cruise ship, and it will still replace trucks ashore. But I agree 100%, Steve. That's a main driver for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. As Francis said, it's you know, taking trucks off the road is a very good advertisement in general for shipping. Inland waterways are clearly an area there also. But what we can say is with the wide-ranging scope of mass, better decision support tools will lead to better resource utilisation, which of course has got an environmental impact as well. But that's not necessarily talking about a crewless vessel. It's just the decision support tools might mean that the resources are optimised much better.
I think there's an excellent question there from Michael, that what is the expectation assumption on how communication will be handled? Voice communication with conventional ships, voice communication, or both with Mars remote controllers? I think that's an excellent question, and it really pinpoint the complicated situation we will be in, because we will have this mixed fleet for many, many years ahead. And we have this problem not only in IALA, but also in other organizations. Can we completely skip the paper charts? Yeah, but there will still be some ships depending on paper charts without ACLES. And we will have the same challenge in IALA. Yeah, because you will still have these very conventional ships without digital communication possibilities. That's something, it's a very, very important question, and something we need to handle.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's very it's at the forefront of our BTS committee, what the future will hold with this in mind. And as Francis has indicated, you know, perhaps it's a bit of a mix there. Voice communications do have their place, in my personal opinion. Yeah, they're there to inform the whole area of what's going on as well. But as well, digital communications will be the future too. So it's a mix. We're really coming into a transition period until, you know, perhaps after 25 years or so.
no discussion about digitalization without mentioning cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And we have a question here: in what way can the maritime industry address cybersecurity challenges to protect mass from potential hacking and unauthorized access? That's a standard question, I think, a standard concern in all the discussions and conferences I've been to. Actually, you talk about the change from seafarers to e-farers. And I think that is really important, that the education of seafarers needs to take this into account.
Yeah.
And maybe we a little bit behind there. I don't know, but really cybersecurity is a main concern. But it's something can be solved with the system. I mean, you make these systems cyber secure, but what about the seafarers?
Yeah.
That are working with the systems? They need really to change the education to learn about cybersecurity. I know BIMCO has been working on this for many years. Some of the experts on this cybersecurity, and also here in Ayala, our committees, we have cybersecurity high on the agenda. We had a workshop a couple of years ago on cybersecurity. We will now work on an ISAC platform on the Ayala website, where you can report anonymous, maybe cyber attacks, so we can all learn from it. But it's a major concern.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what, in everything that we do, this is going to be a huge part. But certainly, if we're going to have these mass vessels, then they have to be resilient. They have to be able to combat these new threats that we're finding, which goes for everything today as well as in the future.
Anybody would like to take the floor and have a comment or a question? You're extremely welcome just to raise your hand. Ivana asks us here: how will future e-farers gain the maritime experience required to assist autonomous vessel operations without going to sea? Well, it's not tomorrow, Ivana, but it's as Tom mentioned, that is one of the main business case and drivers for the ship owners, as we learned during the workshop, this lack of seafarers. So I think all the people who would like to be seafarers, they still have a job.
Yeah.
many years ahead.
We're okay there.
But I agree completely with Ivana that is a concern, because I think, now I'm old, of course, but I think we hear that the quality of the traditional quality of seafarers might reduce in the future. More and more digitalization, and that is a concern, of course.
Yeah, and part of the presentation was talking about the balance between human and machine, and we were talking about what makes it very important to have there is an importance around having a human involved, is that knowledge of experience that they can apply to come up with something perhaps a bit more creative to problem solve. And so it's an extremely valid question.
There's a question there. Your expectation is a more smooth traffic flow. I will assume less delays. However, does this statement based on simulation or increased or decreased vessel traffic in numbers? I think it's almost a fact, or it's something that is discussed a lot, that more digitalization will mean increased efficiency in the traffic flow, because of the just-in-time arrival. That's one of the main things that are discussed, that if you have a digital system that can predict the whole route of the ship, you can continue with the same speed along the route and then arrive just in time at the port. And if you tell me that masters already do that. I can tell you, no, they don't, because if you fly into Singapore, you pass the area in front of the port there, and you see hundreds of ships waiting because they arrive too early, and that's a problem today. I think.
Yeah,
You can save a lot of fuel with more digitalization.
yeah, absolutely. It's the rationale behind that is merely it's merely a smoother exchange of information and knowledge between both shore and ship. And so that's the rationale. If we have more information of when, where, what, etc., then we should be able to be in a better position to plan. That's it. It's rather simple, really.
Do we have any other questions? Somebody from the floor? There's a question about sailing in foggy weather for Mars ships, if they can be more reliable. It's really not an issue, I would say, but why not? Why not? Because I remember when I was young, aircraft were often delayed or could not take off because of bad weather or fog. Now you never experience that anymore. Huh? They always fly, no matter what the weather is. So why not? Why not also for ships?
Yeah.
But it's not really our specialty. Yeah, that's a commercial for the ARM committee. That ARM is from Guttorm, from Norway. That ARM has Mars on the task plan. And you are welcome to join the ARM committee. All the committees have actually meetings here in the spring. I think all committees. It's a cross-committee subject, Mars. So all of them. Are the P&I clubs and other insurance companies getting involved with this autonomous future? The business case presented make no mention of future liability issues and increased insurance cost to shipping companies, which may overweight innovation in this sector. We have not involved the P&I clubs. They are not, I say this diplomatically, but they're not so easy to talk to because the price for an insurance is completely dependent on the number of accidents. So they are not an expert, but they normally do not lower the insurance cost in advance. Yeah, they would like to see how many accidents. But I heard actually at a conference and presentation from the P&I club that one of the main costs for insurance is actually the crew that is injured, sick or whatever. So they were quite interested in Mars because if there's no crew, they will save all this money for crew injuries. So that could be part of the business case, but it's not. No, we are not experts.
No, we're not experts. I guess I did have a brief conversation with an underwriter, and again, they were quite comfortable with the idea. But of course, that everything comes at a cost. So they're quite happy to insure anything for a price. So, but again, that's not really our area of expertise.
Now also the VTS committee is making commercial.
Yeah.
Week 11. So,
here we go. Yeah.
So we will be the Ayala headquarters will be packed with people.
Exactly. Please join us.
Any more questions before we close this very interesting session? Nobody would like to take the floor. Otherwise, I would like to thank you so much for joining us. 177 people. It's absolutely wonderful. And we hope to see many of you here in the spring session of the committee meetings. You are very, very welcome. And it's all in person. And this webinar is an exception because we like to see our members face to face. That's how we like to work.
Absolutely.
In Ireland. So thank you so much for joining, and I wish you a good morning, evening, whatever. Afternoon, wherever you are. And we hope to see you very, very soon here in Paris. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.